Hi, welcome to Hidden in Plain Sight. This part of me has also been known as Number 1. I was the first part, or I should say, I was the one that believed I was the only one. And that was part of my programming and my brainwashing that I was groomed to believe since childhood. This video, I would like to address one of my fears, because I'm hoping that by addressing it myself, it will help me to overcome it and not really have to stress about it anymore. Because if I'm being honest, it's kind of keeping me from speaking. It's keeping my other parts silent, too. And I don't really want to keep doing that. I don't really want to be silenced anymore. And I also am recognizing that a lot of what I'm afraid of is rooted in shame that I don't really think is mine to carry anymore. Or even at all. This part of me was the cover-up part of all of my other parts. I was convinced that I was the only part, that I was the only person in this body. I know that sounds weird, but each of my other parts, when they've come forward, they have always felt like they were the person that was in this body, and only that person, because of how disconnected each of our parts were originally. Now that we're slowly merging together, and now that we are talking to each other more, and feeling and sensing each other more, we kind of we recognize that each part of us was just a piece. When I began to have to face that I was split, when the Lord told me that I was split, I originally didn't understand what he meant. I didn't realize that he meant my mind and my soul and my consciousness was broken into pieces. And he gave me a few pictures in my mind to explain that to me, to help me understand what happened to me. And in my next video, I'm hoping to read the, I guess, technically children's book version of my story that Jesus led me to write to my other parts, that I'll share with all of you to help you all maybe understand a bit more of our story as well. As you can probably tell by now, I continue to use the pronouns we and us and our and all of that, and plural pronouns. It's kind of come naturally as we've began to acknowledge and recognize each part of us, instead of just saying I or me or this part of me, which feels like we're just talking about just one part. We tend to say we or us as an acknowledgement of the whole, so that we are all recognized. And we try to, when we're able to, talk to each other in the mind to come up with decisions, and or nudge each other about things we need to do, such as to-dos and stuff like that. It's very weird. I'll probably explain more of that in later videos, but it's also part of the healing process and part of, I guess, the symptoms of dissociative identity disorder. Eventually, the goal is to merge together, if that's your goal, I guess, but also you kind of have to learn to relearn about each part and how to work together, because it's not just you anymore, kind of thing. There's other broken pieces of you. Anyway, Jesus gave me some pictures to help me understand what it meant to be split. And so one of the first visuals he gave me was that I was like a broken coffee cup. And it was like, I was born a whole coffee cup, and then I got dropped and shattered because of trauma and abuse, and I was just one piece of the coffee cup. And it would explain why I was struggling to hold or carry the same things that my peers were carrying, because it was impossible. I couldn't hold the same amount of coffee in my cup because I was just a tiny little chunk of a cup. I wasn't whole. So that led to struggling to function. And we still have aspects of struggling to function on a day-to-day basis. We are getting better at it, thankfully, the more we've learned to work together. We've slowly been getting into a routine, and we write each other notes to try to keep up with things. There still is some PTSD, trauma, amnesia that happens. That's a rather frustrating thing. I'll probably explain that one in another video as well. It is a bit self-explanatory, but I don't want to make like a super long video tonight, so I'm just trying to kind of do, I guess, an overview a little bit. Anyway, once I realized that, I had to then realize that with Jesus' help, I needed him to bring me the other pieces of my cup. And so he did allow a lot of all of my parts, I should say, to come forward over the last few years. And now we have come to the conclusion that there are 38 pieces of me. Not just number 1, but 1 through 38. So, I kind of sidetracked there a little bit, but that was kind of also a part of my story because I didn't realize that I was a piece of myself. I was only a fraction of myself, and that I was covering up everything. It wasn't really a deliberate, willful choice, but more of a subconscious, brainwashed, I guess, choice. I've come to realize that a lot of the lies about myself I believed because I desired them to be the truth. And so over the last several years, I've had to face that just because I wanted it to be true doesn't make it true. And so I've had to face that. And one of the things that I've had to struggle to face the most is that I spent my entire life believing that I was a virgin until I got legally married a few years ago. And I would talk about it quite a bit, almost like I was... The best way I can describe it now is parroting the narrative that I was being groomed and brainwashed under. I mean, my mother would introduce me to everyone, I'm not even kidding, everyone I met, with the following sentences. "This is so-and-so, my daughter. She's a virgin." Literally within 30 seconds of meeting someone, the first thing they were told about me was that I was a virgin, and talking about my sexual activity or lack thereof, supposedly. Not, she's a straight-A student, not, oh, she's going to college for this and this, or, Not, oh, she's interested in painting, or knitting, or crocheting, or she loves to sing. You know, there's so many other things about me that, and my other parts, that is so much better to include about me than my virginity or lack of it. That shouldn't have been the first thing that she would introduce me to, but it was so normalized for me. I mean, I remember hearing this since before puberty, just always being introduced that way. And as I got older, by like my mid-teens, it started to make me really uncomfortable. I mean, yeah, I think I always thought it was a little bit weird because I'd never really heard anyone else get introduced in that way. But I began to realize this is strange, and why does she have to mention that? Why is that the most important thing to mention about me, instead of maybe my hobbies, or what I've got going on in my life, or maybe what she loves about me, or she's proud about me? But the only thing that she was quote-unquote proud about was whether or not I was a virgin. And I've had to come to realize that part of why I clung so deeply to that belief that I was a virgin, the brainwashing that I was a virgin, is because I wanted it to be true. Because the truth is, the first person to inappropriately touch me, and let's see, how do I word this so that YouTube doesn't get mad at me? I think the YouTubers tend to use the word grape, instead, so we'll just say grape, for now. We'll come up with another term another time, I'm sure. I'm kind of just on the spot doing this video, so, yeah, so I had to come to terms that my first time, in that particular act was with my biological father. He graped me. Okay? Yeah. And so, and then on top of that, I'm also still living with my parents up until, like, basically, when they allowed me to get legally married, which I believe now was part of them trying to cover up things even more. So I was still living with these monsters who abused me, trafficked me, was taking me to satanic rituals, and graping me, and things like that. So, as a child, you know, on top of that, though, they're doing all of these things. Most of the time, they're doing these things at nighttime, in the middle of the night. So, I'm experiencing these traumatic, horrible, monster-like experiences since childhood, at nighttime, terrified. And then the next morning, everyone's acting like nothing happened, because they're brainwashing me to believe that nothing happened. You know, they would also sometimes drug me and things like that. I believe most of the time they actually drugged me when I was living with them, which I believe was to make it appear like a dream-like state or some sort of nightmare, to further gaslight me that this stuff didn't happen. And so it was easy for me to believe the cover-up because I wanted it to be true. I needed to believe it to survive because I was literally living with satanic monsters instead of parents. And I was living with people that were toxic and abusive instead of people that were supposed to love and protect me. People that were supposed to be caring for me were purposefully putting me in harmful and toxic and unsafe and inappropriate situations on purpose. And so I believed the lie that I was a virgin until marriage and shouted it from the rooftops because I wanted that to be real. I wanted that to be my reality. And at the time when I was parroting it, you can see it quoted in newspapers. If you find me, you can see me posting it on social media about a decade ago. I was screaming it at the top of my lungs because that's how much I wanted it to be the truth. But I've come to realize that most people tend to keep that sort of information private. They tend to only share that with people they're dating or they're married to. They don't tend to talk about whether or not they are active in that way or not at all. And so in a way, that was kind of a sign of how programmed and groomed and abused I was, that I'm just parroting these things off, on top of my mother introducing me as a virgin everywhere we went, on a sometimes daily basis. This was what was being quoted around me. I do also believe that because I was programmed and groomed to be a virgin Christian to cover up the satanic ritual abuse, they desired me to appear like I was following God, but they didn't intend for me to actually choose to follow God. And so what further solidified my believing in the brainwashing that I was a virgin is because I was taking to heart everything that I was learning in the churches that I was being raised in as the cover-up, and I was trying to follow God. And so by believing that I'm a virgin and desiring to live that out in my heart kind of helped really cement that in place for decades of my life. I mean, I knew I had a history of being sexually abused when I was a child, but I didn't really count that as like losing being a virgin. I don't really know how you're supposed to define that stuff out officially, to be honest, but I've had to come to the conclusion that I wasn't a physical virgin, and but in my heart I desired to be one. I remember at 12 years old telling my mom one day that I wanted to wait until marriage. I even wanted to go as far as choose to have my first kiss at the altar. Like, that's how much I yearned and desired to have that as my choice for my body, and whether or not I would be touched in that way. But it was not a choice I was allowed to make, because when I was 12, I had already been sold multiple times. I was already raped multiple times at that point, more times than I could count. And that was hard, because I had to face the shame that the church puts on a lot of people, because, and I'm not saying to a point that the shame shouldn't be there a little bit, because I think it's meant to be it's a desire to live a holy life. But the problem is they take it so far that if you do sin or somehow fall away from God or make poor choices in your life and make mistakes, that you're just suddenly no longer holy or worthy of God. And so it goes way too far. desiring to live a holy life and follow God and his ways is important. I don't get me wrong there. I don't want to diminish following Jesus and his ways by any means. But there is an aspect of you can't mess up, or you're a shameful sinner and you're condemned to go burn in the lake of fire kind of thing. So I had to wrestle with facing not only that what I thought was my reality was actually brainwashing, and then I had to face the truth of what my reality of my life was, and that I was being trafficked and drugged and sold and brainwashed to forget what this was happening. And then I had to face God, and because I desired his ways since childhood, I was very ashamed that I was failing him by having to face these things. But then he reminded me of the few times that he very intimately showed up in my bedroom. The same bedroom where I was being kidnapped and raped and trafficked. He came to my bedroom when I was about 12 years old and filled my bedroom with his presence, with his love. It was almost like this sweet smelling aroma of perfume, and I want to say, in a weird way, I think spiritually I could see it was like this purple essence of God, and I was enveloped in a love and a compassion and a gentleness that I had never experienced in my life, that I never experienced in a church, for that matter. And he came to me when I was at that age, 11 or 12, I want to say, was about. And he already knew. He already knew the family I was born into. He already knew what had already been happening for over a decade at that point in my life. He already knew what was in store for me years later. And he showed up with love and compassion and gentleness. And then I remember I was about 17 or 18. It was right before maybe even almost 19 now that I'm thinking about it. Around there, late teens. And I was finishing a book that I no longer can recommend because I tried rereading it since then, and I realized that while Jesus used it to reach me, it's actually really inappropriate. So I'm not even going to name the book, but I finished that book in 3 days. It was a book based off of the Bible book Hosea, but they went a little too far with the storyline there and the what is it called? Artistic interpretation, I guess. So that's why I don't want to recommend it. I realized that it was just more of a Jesus used that with where I was at, and I didn't realize at the time how much I related to the prostitute in the book as well as in the Bible. And, at this time, I was still believing that I was a virgin, not realizing that I was being sold every couple years, which explains why we moved so much. Every 1 to 2 years, sometimes every 6 months, we were moving. And he showed up in my bedroom. as soon as I finished the last word on the page, I was bawling my eyes out for some reason, and now I realize why. Almost confessing and apologizing for being a prostitute, even though at the time I didn't fully understand what I was saying, and he enveloped my bedroom in this spiritual hug that I'll never forget. And over the last couple years, as I've had to face all of these repressed memories, and acknowledge that I wasn't a virgin Christian, and that I didn't live a pure and holy life. And even though I still struggle and struggle to accept that I didn't totally fail God, I realize now it was my biological family that failed him in a huge way. But those times when he showed up in my bedroom have meant even more to me, because I realize now he was showing up to me, and he already knew, and he loved me anyway, and he loves me anyway. And so that's helped me to face the churchianity shame of not being holy or worthy of God, because I'm not. But he looked at me with love and said, I choose you. I choose you to be a part of the remnant of my family, to be grafted into my family, to be called a daughter of my kingdom. Jesus took me out of a family of Satanists and calls me daughter. And so, while I get afraid that people are going to come across my old social media posts or the newspaper articles where the narrative is shared quite clearly there, I've realized now that recognizing that I was not a virgin my entire life has allowed me to understand and experience God's love and compassion and gentleness on a deeper level than most people ever do. And how much I can relate to the prostitute that washed Jesus' feet with her tears. How many days in my life I have done that, the more I've had to face that I was prostituted by my biological family. And how many times I still have to remind myself that Jesus says, daughter, your sins are forgiven. So, I wanted to address that fear because I don't want it to have a hold on me anymore. I don't want it to silence me anymore. And I don't want it to cover up what has happened to me, because it also covers up what God has done for me. And he has taken me out of a satanic priestly line, a high authority satanic priestly line that used me to unite the nations in Satan's kingdom. And now Jesus is going to use me to tear it all down. And I'm not saying that to brag, but yeah. I know the enemy well, and now it is time for the enemy to be exposed. I was born on enemy territory, and I was, yeah. I was born an enemy of God, groomed to be an enemy of God. And I still chose him, and he chose me in the midst of it. It's a miracle in itself. Anyway, there's so much more to my story, so much more that me and my other parts can share. This video is getting quite long already, and so I will conclude things now and ask that you come back and return for more videos from me and my other parts. I'm hoping that my next video will involve my storybook that I wrote. It's not officially published or anything. It's quite literally hand-drawn. But it would bring me a lot of joy to share that with all of you, and I hope that you'll return for that one. I don't know if any of my other parts have planned any videos, but I feel like I needed to share this one as the next video so that we can continue to move forward. And I do really feel a sense of relief that I've addressed this. And I think I'm going to continue going in this direction anytime I have a fear of backlash or something like that, a fear of judgment, or any of these fears that are trying to silence me. I'm just going to address it head on and go from there. And I welcome your listening and support. I encourage you to subscribe so that you can get more videos. I have no idea how frequently we will be doing these videos. I know we were hoping to do one once a week, but to be honest, my fears here that I've addressed today were part of, I think, what were hindering us from doing that. So I'm hoping by sharing this, we will be able to do a weekly video from different parts of me to share each of our story. But otherwise, I think we might just do potentially a monthly video. So if you're willing to patiently wait as we slowly trickle out videos of what has happened to us and what we've learned, then I welcome you to continue to follow along. Feel free to share the videos here. We also ask that you keep us anonymous for now, as we are just trying to get it out there. We're not trying to monetize our story. We're not trying to become an influencer. We just want to kind of get it out there. Video journaling has been really therapeutic for me and many of my other parts, so we're just kind of trying it on a larger scale, and we're trusting that those who share our story are doing so because Jesus is leading them, and we're hoping it will lead more people to join our circle of support and love and pray for us. And if Jesus leads you to support us in any way financially, that would be wonderful as well. I am not asking for like thousands of dollars. I just have a lot of health issues. We have a lot of physical damage from the abuse that was found over the last year or so that still needs to heal. And we have a lot of needs financially with a special diet and other things. So it would really mean a lot if there was people out there that were willing to kindly, out of their desire to support us and help us heal and become whole and to continue to grow in Jesus. I have wonderful spiritual and emotional support, not only through Jesus and my personal relationship with him, but my new family that I'm staying with, that I'm safely living with. We have a decent support system. It's just financially it's really hard because I lost my Social Security income recently, and so far nothing has really opened up with that. We started crocheting things to sell, but we haven't sold anything yet, so So if Jesus places it on your heart, if you see this, to be willing to financially support us, I will try to include a PayPal link or some sort of maybe Venmo. I don't know. I haven't really decided which one we'll start with. Down below. No pressure. I mean, anything from $1 to $20 would be, still a huge help. Thank you again for listening to this part of my story, and I hope that, I hope that you face your fears too. Face them head on, because then they lose their power. I'm learning. Jesus is the Prince of Peace, and I'm really desiring to be in complete peace. And I want to be free of all of the shame that is meant for my biological family and my abusers, and not for me. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for coming to Hidden in Plain Sight. I hope you'll return for more videos. Have a good night, or day, or whatever time it is. Bye!